one of the really interesting side effects of AI is it really thinks hard about everything. People aren't so good at doing that. If you're doing a simple task, people tend to switch into simple thinking mode and we do it quickly, don't apply much thought. But it's not like that. It's never lazy about the task it's doing. In fact, it's quite the opposite. It overthinks most things. But actually, this has a really nice side effect, which is while it's doing a simple task, it often finds something or flags something to you that doesn't look right. And this helps to improve quality. It means that less mistakes actually happen.
You're listening to Inside Commerce, a weekly e-com strategy, technology and CX focused podcast hosted by experienced digital consultants and replatform specialists James Gedd and Paul Rogers. Get insights into e-com strategy of leading brands, hear from industry thought leaders and leading tech vendors with practical advice to help you improve your online CX. This episode is sponsored by WorldPay. Coming back to another interesting topic around AI, but the aim of today is to steer clear of what is some of the ongoing hype in the market and focus very succinctly on the practical ways that senior engineering teams are factoring AI workflows into their own and client processes to drive better efficiency, smarter outputs, and also help people focus on doing the fun stuff and not have to do laborious repeat tasks that no one wants to do in life. Or, a very small group of people might want to do, but most of us don't want to do it. So I've got two really, really experienced and wonderful people I've known for many years, worked on several projects. They come out of the Adobe ecosystem, run one of the leading agencies in that space, Tom&Co. So first of all, I've got Tom, who's the founder and director. Hey, Tom, how you doing?
I'm very well, thanks. How are you?
I'm good. It's been too long, actually. We said it's been way too long since we had you on the podcast. I'm really looking forward to it. And also, Tom has the second most played episode of all time on Inside Commerce. I think it's like over 800 or 900 plays over the time so far. So you're in the Hall of Fame.
I'm honoured. I'm very honoured.
Yes, and thanks for coming back. And then also we have Jakob Halver, who's the head of ops and lead business analyst at Tom&Co. Hey, Jakob.
Hey, James. Glad to be here.
Yeah, I was saying before we start recording that it's criminal that I haven't had you on before, because every time I've worked with you, I've learned insane amount, loads of things. And my interest was piqued by a post that Jakob put on LinkedIn recently about AI workflows that they're building using Claude. And I just thought it's a really cool topic to get into, because this isn't about platform. This is about engineering skills, automation, and driving efficiency to make people's lives easier, which obviously is centric to the platforms you work on, but it's agnostic. It's not limited to. So that's my kind of preamble and ramble about what we're going to talk about. Does that sound like a good enough introduction, gents?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Cool. Well, before we get into the questions, just for those of you who've not come across Tom, kind of speak Tom&Co before. Tom, do you want to give a bit of a flavour for what you guys do? And then Jakob, maybe you can add on to that, your role and how that's been evolving.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So Tom&Co has been around for what feels like forever now. So we set up in 2011. So we're sort of 15 years into this journey. And our focus at the very beginning was on the world of Magento and e-commerce, and has obviously changed over the years into Magento 2 and Adobe Commerce. And so we do a lot of Adobe Commerce implementations these days across about 25 clients. And yeah, as a business, we sort of focus on how we can help clients, of course, bring their e-commerce vision to life, but also how they can grow it as well. So we have a strategy team as well as a development team to help on both sides of the fence. And yeah, so just a quick bit of background for me. So I originally started life as a developer, so I'm a very technical-minded person. And since have been running the business for the last 15 years with a focus on operation, client relationships, and making sure that we are there to support our clients as partners.
So I've been at Tom&Co for about 10 years. Before that, I was client-side e-commerce. And over those 10 years, I think I've scoped out and replatformed about 50 websites. So I've spoken to a lot of e-commerce teams who had challenges and businesses who had problems with their processes. And I think 3 years ago when AI started, what was really exciting for me, and hence why I'm here to talk about this topic, is that I realized that AI is a novel solution, which will finally allow me to help those teams to solve problems in a slightly different way. So I've always been I'm techie like Tom, never been a developer, but I've always been interested in how to make businesses more efficient. And it's really exciting that over the last 2-3 years, like the means we have are massively bigger than before. So really keen to share some of the stuff we've been doing, some of the stuff we've been doing for our clients, and hopefully it might be helpful to some people.
Yeah, it definitely will be. I know from having worked with you guys on a few projects. I mean, I know it's been a couple of years now, but what I love is that you enjoy a challenge, that you properly enjoy. If a client or an annoying consultant like me pushes back and goes, that's not going to work, and this is why, and actually we need something that's going to do A, B, and C. You guys love that because you love to be challenged to come up and then come back and go, there you go, there's a solution. And I think this, for those of this, and that's why I wanted Jakob and Tom on today, because where AI's heading is rapid, but it's about really understanding how you can properly use it to deliver tangible business outcomes, not just put something in place for the sake of saying we've got an AI strategy. So let's do a bit of foundation of where you guys are seeing the market first, and then we'll come to Jakob about that post he put on LinkedIn recently. But so how are you seeing at Tom&Co, how are you seeing the tech ecosystem evolve? How is AI changing the approach to things like replatform or building out tech stacks and getting value from existing tech stacks?
Yeah, so, well, I mean, it's changing it a huge amount. It's a significant shift, the biggest one I've ever seen since I've been working in the industry. I think, from an internal perspective as an agency and as a company that is responsible for writing code, of course, we are seeing the change there significantly. So our development teams are writing less code and AI is writing more code. And so we've had a really strong focus on trying to utilize that as much as we can and move our developers from coders to architects, people who understand the system design, the interactions between the various systems to a really deep level, because they need to spend a lot less time writing code these days. AI has is close to solved that. My view is that it's pretty much solved, and it certainly will be solved before the end of the year, just the speed of which AI is changing. I have a very, very keen interest in AI. I think anyone that knows me is very much aware of that because it's the one topic I always want to talk about. And I've watched the evolution of AI over the past 3 years or so go from a fairly unhelpful system that makes a huge number of mistakes to one that now is capable of getting things correct in the first shot very often. So from our internal view, it's absolutely imperative that we ensure that our teams know how to use AI throughout their jobs. And that is not just code. That is all levels. And I think we'll talk about that more as through the podcast. But obviously a big part of it for us is code and the efficiency of writing code. But if you look at it from the brand's perspective, obviously, they're not necessarily writing much code at the moment. I think they'll probably start doing more of that in terms of scripting and automations and stuff. But easier areas for them to enter into using AI in replatforms or just in their day-to-day is things like data. So AI has been incredible at understanding large data sets and manipulating large data sets. So a practical example of that is product data. I mean, one of the biggest challenges we always see on the client side with a replatform is getting product data into order. So while we're slaving over code and trying to get functionality to work, they're slaving over product data and trying to get it into a good shape. And so if you are typical challenges are making sure that your attributes are set correctly. We know they're incredibly important for search and faceted navigation. Well, actually, I think if you use AI in the right way, you can get it to do a lot of that legwork in terms of getting product attributes set correctly across the entire catalog, whether it be 10 products or 20,000 products or more. So that's one area where I would, say that replatforming from a brand's perspective is changing. It's making it easier. Another area, and we had an interesting example of this, is clients doing prototyping. So this was always traditionally done agency side, because you need a team of designers, specialist tools, understanding of what's possible. And actually, I think now brands can lean into AI a bit more and do some of their own prototyping, because they are, the agency's job is to extract the idea from the client, right? Is to understand what their requirements are, what they want to achieve. And if they can come with prototypes, that makes it a hell of a lot easier for the agency to understand exactly what they're trying to implement. And then, of course, to bring our own knowledge and skills and add to that. But yeah, I mentioned the example. So recently, we have been looking at improving the sort of click and collect flow on Top Styles, and they came to us with a prototype built by them in Claude Code. Obviously not production ready or anything like that, but it was a fascinating example of how they were able to very quickly explain to us their thinking and idea of how they wanted it to function through what was a very impressive prototype. So I think brands need to be thinking about, or e-commerce teams need to be thinking about those two areas at least. How could they bring AI into their data replatforms, and how can they help their agencies better understand what they want to achieve from the new website through prototyping. And just to round that all off, I think ultimately replatforming is just getting easier, and it's getting faster and a lot less risky. So where people used to fear it before, I actually think that is going to change over the next year or two as these large scale projects become much more manageable with the help of AI.
Ready to grow your business online? With WorldPay e-commerce, you can deliver fast, secure payments your customers love, backed by global reach and real people-powered support. Scale with confidence and enhance your customers' experience with WorldPay e-commerce.
I think it's really interesting you make the mention about moving from engineers to architects, with more code being able to be written, but people needing to have an oversight of understanding how that code fits into a wider ecosystem, what the other dependencies on that are. And that, I think there's real parallels with where client teams are evolving, because you're going to have in time fewer junior level like e-com admins, execs, because actually you can automate so much of the groundwork that those people do, which is foundational and critical to storefront management, whether that's image cleaning, alt text generation, product data cleansing, uploading, you name it. And then more people able to execute on like thinking based tasks and more strategic areas. So yeah, very interesting indeed.
People really need to think about elevating themselves now. That's the key, because AI is capable of doing the grunt work. So that would be my focus. That would be my advice to anyone, is how do you elevate yourself? How can you do more of that more challenging, high value work and less of the low value grunt work?
Yes. And on what nice note to segue into. So Jakob, the LinkedIn post you put about, and you put a very bold statement, and knowing you that you don't put bold statements out flippantly, you put them because of having put the time and effort to really think it through. But Claude Code, Co-work and Design is the most powerful customizable ecosystem we've worked with. And you've worked with lots of different ecosystems. So can you give people listening some context? Like how is that like validated? How is that not hyperbole basically?
Yeah, so I'll try to explain what we do, and I want to preface it by one thing. I'll be talking a lot about Claude and Anthropic, and I think it's for two reasons, because we ultimately come from a tech world, and the Anthropic and Claude Code has been the leading solution in that world for quite some time. But also, I think Anthropic are having a bit of a moment, like their ARR basically quadrupled recently, because they are implementing tools which are very much pragmatically focused on empowering office workers. They have a very narrow focus as a company, whereas some of their competitors like OpenAI have a lot of blue sky thinking. But I want to preface that whilst I'll be talking about the Claude stack, conceptually the same things can be applied on Microsoft stack Google Gemini or with OpenAI. It's just, I think right now, Claude has the nicest, easiest to use package. So I'll be talking mostly about that. I think one thing I must start with is just agentic versus transactional AI. And I know agentic AI is the buzzword of the year and everybody is talking about it. But I just want to make very, very clear that that is the differentiating factor and the thing which makes the AI very, very useful for people. I'll just use a very simple example the industry is using to differentiate between transactional and agentic. So transactional AI is like a vending machine. You put money into it, you select your drink, it tries to fulfill the order, tries to give you what you want. If not, it throws an error, and then you have to deal with it yourself. Agentic AI is more like a concierge. So you tell it, I want to book at this restaurant for today. It tries to book it. If it cannot book it, it goes to other restaurants, it calls them up, it tries to find solutions. It will work and it'll spend an hour on the phone for you to try to find a solution. And only after that, it will come back to you. So agentic AI, the real power is that it is task oriented. It's trying to deliver a task and it will spend tens of minutes or even hours working on that task without needing your input. In code, when we are developing complex things, the AI can be working for 4, 6, 8 hours in one go without a human interruption. It makes it really, really useful because the longer it works and it does things like self-validation, the higher the quality of output, because you're not just seeing something it generated in a minute, you're seeing something which went through a very big process. And Claude Co-work is basically Claude Code for office workers. So it uses the same principle of agent, of something which will work for you for a long period of time, but surfaces it in very simple interface, which looks exactly like the normal chatbot we are all used to. So the power of it is that it comes with a lot of connectors. So in our world, we can connect it to Google Drive. We can connect it to ClickUp, our project management tool, Jira, our project management tool. There are many connectors out there. There is a good level of permissions, so you can make it very clear what you want it to access, what you don't want it to access, write, read permissions, etc. But ultimately, it means that with 5 minutes of setup, you can, as a project manager, for example, or as an e-commerce manager, you can get yourself into a situation when this tool has access to a lot of context, which is really important. So it understands, it can go to your files, to your Google Drive files and see statements of work. It can go to the ClickUp management tool and can see what the interactions are between different teams. And you can use it automatically. So I'll give you an example. For example, one thing I'm using Co-work for. So as a head of operations, one of my jobs is to make sure our team spends our time efficiently. It's quite hard because there are over 100 of tickets every day touched in Jira. So I work with Co-work and I created a little routine which runs every day at 8 a.m. where it goes through Jira, ClickUp, and it basically looks at what individual developers and QA members and product managers were working on, which tasks appear to be stuck, which tasks appear to be going over their time allocation, and then produces a report. But it does more than that, because when it sees that there's something is looking strange, something needs further investigation, it does the investigation automatically. It might check and it might already provide a solution. So it might basically do the triage of, I can see this task is stuck. I've actually then looked through your drive and I can see there's a statement of work here. And I can see that the conversation which is being had in the ClickUp tool doesn't really marry up with the statement of work. So maybe this is something where you should intervene. So it's saving me so much time and giving me a lot of visibility. And I can easily imagine how an e-commerce manager could do something similar with is you can connect Co-work to things like Google Analytics. To go through my Google Analytics, search the web about what was happening. Are there any new mentions about my brand? Was there any news article which came out about my brand yesterday? Go through that, read them, correlate with GA traffic, correlate with my spend or performance of ads, and produce a report. And it just does it once you set it up. It just does it every day and kind of runs in the cloud. And you basically start your day with this report. And that's just so powerful and so easy to access. I want to say one thing about prompting. So prompt engineering, I think, was a big thing 2 to 3 years ago. I would say right now, all you need to do to get these amazing results is to provide it with context and then basically just know what you want to do as a human. So I don't think like a lot of the prompt engineering tactics, which were necessary 3 years ago, like you have to talk to it in special language, etc. I don't think that applies anymore. I think now it's just like if you know and you can describe in a human language what you want, the AI usually gets it, and you can iterate a bit so that you can clarify things. So it's really the simplicity of it and the easiness of normal, standard non-technical people to access this agentic AI. I think that was the big moment for me and for us.
Yeah, and interestingly, I've been looking at it on what role it will play on the kind of projects I get involved in, like big replatforming, tech consultancy, because one of the big pains in the arse in all projects is the amount of documentation you have, and cross-referencing, and instead of having to I've got to open functional spec and the scope, and I've got to cross-reference, and well, actually, the ability to just go, right, I have a query on this. Can you find me the relevant info, line details, the cost of that, and you can find the scope, and can you summarize it for me, please? There's just so many ways that it doesn't matter, does it? It doesn't matter what you do. There are applications you can find, and I like the example you gave about running code like 4, 6, 8 hours in the background. I had a project where I was using ChatGPT. I haven't tried Claude yet, but ChatGPT to clean up product data, and it was running loads of Python scripts, and they were like iterative. So I had about 16 different functions I needed to run. That if I went and tried to do that manually without a developer who would then have to build that out and write the scripts and then run it, would take me a long time. But I get the prompt and check that it's understood it correctly. Do you understand? Can you run this? It goes, yes. Can you just answer ABs? You go through this discussive process to the point they go, well, I'm clear. Do you want me to run that? And you go, yeah. Off I go. And that probably took 45 minutes or so to run through, and it kept iterating and checking itself, going, well, actually, I now need to do this. Meanwhile, I'm working on something else. And I come back to it, and then I might give it the oversight, which is where we're coming from, like the junior level people to more senior who've got the ability to critique it and go, okay, that's good, but you haven't quite got this right. Can you now do that? Now runs for another 40 minutes. Off I go and do more work. And overall, it's probably saved a day or two's worth of work.
Yeah, it's incredible. And as you said, the use cases are insane. Like one thing I did on Friday, actually. So I had a statement of work, and also you can connect Claude to your emails. It's actually it's a really good tool to go through emails. So I had a conversation about the statement of work with the client on my email. And I was like, well, now I have to amend the statement of work based on that. I was like, no, actually Claude can do it for me. And it can access the Google Doc, it can access the email. It can create comments in the Google Doc, basically being like, okay, so this is, I think, based on the email conversation that needs to be amended. And I am quite proud of how good I am with these things, but I couldn't find any mistakes. Like it was really, really spot on. And once again, you have to put some work effort into it. So the reason Claude works so well for me is that at the beginning, I've taught it a bit more myself. So I have a system prompt basically telling, I like things, briefly, pragmatically, in a succinct way. Don't write wrong articles, because there's also true AI. Some things people don't like about AI is like it's too expressive. It writes too much text. It creates a lot of, AI slop text. All those can be prevented. Yes. Yeah. All that can be prevented with just like spending some time at the beginning to make sure it works the way you want it to. And it's really good at following all those rules these days.
Just to add to that in terms of examples, one very simple example that I use it for now on a very regular basis, and this comes back to Jakob's point about context. And in the e-commerce space, we're all used to the saying, "Content is king." That was the main saying in SEO for a very long time. Context is king in AI. That's absolutely crucial. And if you connect these sort of this data up to your AI, it does open the door to very simple but very, very useful workflow. So, for example, I think we all live in a world now where we've got too many channels of communication. Often it's Slack, it's Google Chat, it's Microsoft Teams, it's emails, and I'm sure people could list even more that exist in their life. Like WhatsApp's become a bit of a business channel as well. You can actually connect all of them up to your AI system. And one of the bigger challenges is remembering where you've had a conversation, which channel it was on. and often you kind of you know roughly what the answer is, but you need to read it again, and you spend most of your time trying to work out where that conversation happened, which channel it was on. If you connect them all up, actually you can get to a point where you can just ask the AI, I discussed this at some point, could you just summarize it for me? And it's able to look through your various different channels and bring that summary back, saving you time in a fairly in an exercise that you shouldn't really have to do anyway, but it exists in this life. So it's finding those little hacks that can buy you back quite a lot of time.
Yeah, I love it. Anything that cuts out tedium is to be thoroughly embraced. Jakob, you also mentioned Claude Design, something that I've not looked at, but my interest was piqued because when we were chatting about doing this episode, you'd mentioned that Claude Design can benefit developers and e-com teams, and you gave me an example. I think you said Stripe were looking for somebody who are going to train their marketing team on using it to get like greater automation efficiencies. Can you talk people through what's Claude Design? Where does this fit into the ecosystem?
Yeah. So Claude Design is about 3 weeks old now. And it's basically an iteration of the engine is Claude Code, but it's interfaced as a design tool. So it's an online tool where you can go and you can upload, and this is really important. You start by setting up your design system as a brand, and you can do it multiple ways. If you have, for example, a Figma file with your design system, you just upload it and it reads it and it's really good at understanding it. You can give it your code base, so it sees the CSS styling. You can give it your website and it'll try to get the styling from the website. Obviously, the first one gets the best results, but there are ways. And once you set up your design system, you can ask it to generate presentations, generate prototypes, generate full websites for you, which can then be handed over to Claude Code to develop. But where I think it's immensely powerful is, like, we've seen these tools before, but two differentiating factors is one, it's really good at following those brand guidelines. We've been trying these tools all the time and always is like, it kind of looks like the brand, but actually not really. But here, if you spend half an hour setting up the design system properly, like everything which comes out of it adheres to your standards really, really well, to a degree that it basically produces designs which can be sent to developers in our quite complicated design system, which is very, very impressive. And it's interesting what this will mean to Figma, because when this launched, Figma stock dipped a bit, because this is definitely where Anthropic are kind of going into that territory. And have you seen the controversy about like the board members separating the companies, etc.? That's all driven by this, because Figma sees this as quite a big threat. It's not exactly the solution like Figma, but similar. What it means to us, though, is that now e-commerce managers, account strategists in our case, at Tom&Co are able to generate marketing materials which are high quality and actually on par with what the brand does. I can now create presentations which are looking amazing and are on brand and have the right context. So to finish my flow I started last time, so once I amended on Friday my statement of work, and the statement of work is a 5-page technical document. And I know sending it to a group of people, including a CEO. CEO is never going to open the statement of work. So I uploaded it to Claude Design and asked it, create a presentation which summarizes this statement of work on 3 slides. You are creating this for a CEO. And it did really good job. And I had to spend maybe 5 minutes after that, correcting a few things, didn't get right. But ultimately, I ended up with a really good looking presentation, which with very little effort. And what was interesting, last week we saw, I think, and I'll talk about this Stripe example, but I think there are more brands. So this role called Forward Deployed AI Accelerator Marketing basically means Stripe are taking one of their technical team members, putting them into a team of 20 marketeers. And the job of this person is to take the marketeers on a journey to get familiar with AI integrations, AI workflows. To begin with, help them set up, show them the way, but make them self-sufficient, which I think is really powerful. And we've done something like that on a small scale, Tom&Co, when we took our account strategist and Tom and I, being the techies, kind of showed them how these tools operate. And now they absolutely love it, because they can create a case study in half a day with no need for a design team, no need for any tech team. They can turn it into video all by themselves in a really high quality, and they just feel so empowered. So now they are like, we've definitely done that change management right, because they are now super AI and they are looking for other ways and other things they can be doing. And I think this mind shift, and what Tom is saying quite often, it's like with AI, everybody has this aha moment when you're like, this is a tool which is actually really good. This is the tool which will change my life. So for our account strategist was this moment when he had this basically Word doc with the case study, and he was able to use AI, Claude Design, to turn it into a really good looking PDF case study, and then make a marketing video on top of it in about half a day.
Yeah, amazing. Let's get into a bit more deeper into the AI workflow. So Tom, I'll come to you about how you're seeing this fit within Tom&Co internally. Jakob's given one example, and then Jakob, I'll come back to you about the fun you're having building workflows for clients. So yeah, so Tom, where as an agency like co-founder and director, what do you see AI's role in improving how your business operates, and what are the other examples of where it's having tangible benefits?
Yeah, I mean, there are many places that it can help. I think one of the things that we've been doing in Tom&Co for many years, and the irony is, this has been around forever, is automations, and people are familiar with platforms like Make.com and Zapier and so on. We started implementing those kind of workflows into the business quite a few years ago. I think it's probably about 5 years ago that we started working with workflows to try and help aid efficiency and also remove some of that grunt work that people were having to do, like task management, status management, and so on. But about two to 3 years ago, we started injecting AI into that, and I think this is where all businesses can benefit, and it's part of the reason why we as a business is starting to provide this as a service. So by injecting AI into workflows, you get the capability of doing a hell of a lot more than you could before. Workflows were often very programmatic. It's got 10 steps. It must move through those steps. If one of those steps doesn't work, then it will grind to a halt. But whereas if you put AI into it, you really turn it into an intelligent workflow, which sounds a bit buzzy. So what I mean by that is you can make a workflow non-deterministic in an intelligent way, which is very much like a human. Let's face it. You don't know exactly how they're going to do the task, but because they're smart, they'll generally get it done. And that's really the shift that we're seeing now with AI, is certainly in the kind of the workflow space. So I do think that's important that businesses look at workflows more seriously than they have in the past. Some businesses, certainly businesses that we've worked with, have done that. I'm sure, I don't know, James, if you worked on projects where they've done sort of data layer integrations and service layers where sort of systems talk into a single layer and there's some automations around moving data around. It's sort of that kind of thing, but with intelligence injected into it. But vitally, it's making sure that those workflows and AIs, or specifically the AI, has tools available to it. And people might be aware of the term MCP. MCP is the acronym for essentially a way of connecting tools to AI. It's a protocol, and that allows AI to do a lot more than just look up data and respond with information. It can take action, and if you allow it to take action, this is where we move into this agentic position where it can do a hell of a lot more, and it can work on its own over many hours. And just kind of put some color into that with examples. So just a few of the things that we're doing internally at Tom&Co is things like if we have a client brief submitted to us, that immediately kicks off an AI workflow that first of all searches our various different databases, so Jira, Confluence, for any similar brief that we've had before, any similar work that we've implemented before. And that might be from last week, it might be 3 years ago, probably on a different client. And then when it looks up those similar tasks, it can assess what we did in those tasks, what was the information that we captured for the statement of work, and the requirements and so on. And then it can start to flag potential missing information in the brief that we've received, but also flag questions that we should be asking the client, or perhaps want to ask the client to help clarify that brief. And then to top it all off, it's actually able to look at the previous code that's been written. So it can delve into the code. If it's found a similar task, it can delve into that code to give it more additional context around how it works, and some of the things that we need to think about. And then off the back of that workflow, we've got another workflow that will trigger, and that one's to write an initial statement of work. So it will look at what the first workflow has found, and it will, Jakob was talking earlier about example of generating a statement of work. So off the back of that workflow, we can get an initial statement of work ready for our business analyst team. Of course, it will be imperfect. It won't be right, but it's a starting point. And I think this is also another really important thing to think about with AI. If you want AI to solve everything and do it correct first time, you're going to be very disappointed. However, if you accept that maybe 50 to 80% of the time it can solve it, and the rest you need to tidy up after it, you'll be very happy with the results. And you're obviously getting all of those massive efficiency improvements because it is getting some of the work done for you without your intervention. It's some other examples. So we have developer handover notes written by AI now. It was always one of the biggest challenges for us, which is developers hand it over to QA, and they get 3 lines of information from the developer about how to test it, or what the functionality is, or where there's a new feature or setting. So now when it's handed over, AI reads the code. It looks for any changes in where new settings might be. Sorry, excuse me. Where any new settings might be, and helps write a detailed handover note to the QA member who's about to test it. So that it's less likely that they'll miss something in their testing. And just finally, as another example of where we use it, sorry, excuse me, is service desk. So when a new issue comes into service desk with perhaps something isn't working as it should, or actually just looking for help how to manage the website, AI does the initial investigation. So AI will look at the request, look at the code. It has access to our error tracking tool and our log tracking tool, and it can do an initial triage of that ticket and help steer people in the right direction. So again, not necessarily solving it, but reducing a huge amount of time that someone might need to spend digging through various log files and errors and so on to try and identify what might be the problem within the service desk ticket.
And this for me is really interesting because working between client-side e-com teams and agencies like yourself, where the client side want to get is they want to spend their money on value add, not on fixing things that are not fun to do, or on raising tasks where actually it's not a bug or an issue. It's more just a information that can be passed back on how to do something properly within the storefront. So the more that AI can reduce the time of developers being distracted from the proper roadmap items, the better.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's about winning back time. So it's allowing teams to focus on the higher value stuff, and having more time in their day to get work done.
Yeah, and make developers happy rather than them to go, oh, they've raised that again.
Well, absolutely. Yeah, the more time you can get them focusing on feature development rather than service desk, it certainly makes them happy.
Yeah. Cool. Exactly. But let's flip to the client. Sorry, Jakob, you're going to say something.
I just want to say one thing, because there's one thing which Tom mentioned, which some people get spooked about, which is almost like, okay, you have to accept that the AI gets it only 70% right. And some people are worried about it for right reasons, because sometimes AI might be doing things in your production system which are very important. And if we just say, get it 70% right, people, what happens in the next 30%? Is it going to delete my database? So I think there's two two things I want to mention, which is obviously there is proper permission system which needs to be in place. But the second thing is, I think what people maybe don't think about, and where AI is really good, is especially with agentic AI, is this able to estimate how well it thinks it did reasonably well. So if it's a task where it needs to do something really complicated and needs to write into a production system, into ERP system or something like that, you can easily basically intersect and have an agent reviewer in the middle being, does this look safe? Does this look like this is actually doing what it should do? And does it look safe? If yes, proceed. If no, there's this human in the loop interdiction. And basically it can just an email and say, oh, I've prepared this, but I wasn't really sure if I should do it. So here, you human, please decide. And then massively reduces the risk because, and it's once again, it's not 100% automation, but you then now have an automation which works 70% of that automatically and is fully safe. And I think that's an important concept. If people, we normally just use the RAG, red, amber, green system. Green, everything just goes automatically. Amber, red, human needs to be involved in the loop. And this is a way how to massively de-risk all this risk around the stochastic nature of AI.
Yeah, and it's and actually there's a really nice, I mean, you can send an email, but Jakob and I have implemented workflows that interact on chat. So it's an automation that kicks off in the background. It starts a particular task. It gets to a point where it needs a human in the loop, and it sends a Slack message. And it says, I'm just about to do this thing. Are you happy for me to do it? Or I need your clarification on this. Can you give me some more information? You send it back, and it goes back into the workflow that then continues on working through the original task.
But I think this is the critical thing. The two bits you guys touch on. One is governance, but one is open-mindedness. And I think there is a tendency, because we've all been in technology long enough to know that hype cycles come, and then there are self-interested parties who want you to believe that everything should now be with this tech's going to fix everything in the world. And that then creates expectations that are warped. And then people use an AI and it doesn't do things perfectly. And they go, AI's crap. And actually, AI is not about being perfect. Humans aren't perfect. Developers aren't perfect. Like, we all make mistakes. We can't be perfect 100% of the time. But if something that's 60, 70% perfect can save me 3 hours a week, and that helps me make better decisions because I can polish it quicker. I use it for content generation, like spinning up summaries of the blogs, the podcasts we're recording, because that's far more efficient use of time than me writing from scratch. But take the core notes from it and then me add the human editor on top to put it in the right tone of voice and to write it how I want it to be. That's saving me an hour or so every single time. Is you've got to come into it with an open mind that says, how do I use it? Not expecting it to be absolutely perfect. But then the other bit you've touched on, which is critical, is the human part, which can never go away, is governance. Because throwing tech and automation workflow without oversight and knowing how you're going to scrutinize it, it's no different to, senior engineers overseeing mid-end engineers who oversee junior engineers, and the quality control process you go through to sense check things are production ready. So I think that's an area that e-com teams who maybe don't have that engineering discipline, when they're putting AI, the governance piece for how it's working is going to be critical.
It's really interesting that you mentioned that, actually, because internally we talk a lot about how you bring the code review process into the rest of the business, because it is very much true that within technical teams, nothing goes live without code being reviewed. So a junior, a mid, a senior will write code and it will be reviewed by someone else. And you need to apply that same principle to AI in every place. But if you apply that principle, then you can move away from this worry of, is it going to do something that it shouldn't do, to a position of, it's going to do the work for me. And then I'm going to elevate myself to just reviewing it, make sure it's fine. It's very much kind of a managerial type of approach to things. And then either approve it or feedback and let it go back to work on that particular task because it didn't get it right, or take it off its hands because it's beyond what it's capable of doing. Yeah. And you need to finish it off.
For that learning piece, this is another area I think people need to realize that is the learning capacity is, it's going to have hallucinations. They're getting better, to be fair. There's fewer. It's going to make errors. It's going to have false assumptions. but every time you correct it and give it the evidence, it's learned and it's stored that. Now, human brains can get things wrong, and then we can go, right, oh, actually, I shouldn't do that. But there is a risk of it repeating because we are fallible. We don't have a like perfect queue retrieval system in our brains to that exact piece of information at the time that we need it, versus the way that an AI model will look up to its learning base. So I think that's the thing. The where it's going to get more and more powerful is the context that humans, senior and experienced humans, give it, and the control means that the accuracy levels when you're doing repeat tasks are going to go up and up and up.
Well, this is where you're really getting into the kind of the some of the technical challenges that exist in AI models at the moment that people are trying to solve. So, although its recall of stuff that you're working on is near perfect, and they talk about needle in the haystack tests, where for a long time now, for over a year, AI has been pretty much acing that particular test, which is remembering a small bit of information within a large piece of information. It's exceptionally good at that, but we operate in AI within a context window, and it's like a limitation. So most models now are pushing the 1 million token context, which is a vast amount of information, but in a lifetime of working, it's absolute drop in the ocean. You can fit the whole set of Harry Potter novels into it, but the amount of information that you deal with on a day-to-day basis means that context window is filled up within hours. So once it moves out of that context window, it's forgotten. And this is where you see this problem with AI making the same mistakes over and over and over. So those incredibly intelligent people working at places like OpenAI and Anthropic and Google are trying to solve this problem within the model, but you can already solve it quite well outside of the model with sort of long-term memory strategies. So there's something called RAG, which is essentially a system where you can retrieve information that's outside of the context window, and that might be things like things that you learned a week ago about how to write the statement of work that I like and what are my preferences about it. Or you can use markdown files for memory system as well, which are really just text files that get indexed and pulled back into the context when they're needed. So there are techniques that can give AI models long-term memory, but you need to be selective about what it is you're actually remembering over a long period of time. One of the workflows that Yaka worked on recently, he implemented a beautifully simple solution to this with a spreadsheet. And the client has access to the spreadsheet. They can insert rules, essentially memories about how it should do the particular task. And every time the workflow runs, it pulls those rules from the spreadsheet, and they act as long-term memories around how they want it to complete a particular task.
That might actually be an interesting workflow to talk about, because James, I know we wanted to mention some we did for our clients. So this one was for a B2B client, and it was kind of two things in one. So firstly, they get inquiries through their website. People are asking for quotes. So, and those inquiries contain some basic, if I want to inquire for a quote, I need to type in my basic contact information and some other details. And basically there was an inbox they were going to, and a member of staff was monitoring that inbox. New inquiry came, did like a little triage, like, is this spam? Does this look valid? If it's okay, we go to their ERP system and raise it as a sales opportunity in the ERP system. And by raise it, I mean copy paste the name, copy paste the phone number, copy paste the email into relevant fields in the ERP. And then would reply to the lead, basically, yeah, we got your inquiry, or something like that. So the first step we did was obviously automated this flow, because their challenge was that it wasn't coming from single phone. That would be too easy. The email inbox was getting stuff from multiple different places, so the data was unstructured. Conceptually, it was always the same data, but in an unstructured form. So you couldn't write a simple automation because the email looked slightly different every single time. So we build a flow, monitors the inbox every single time email comes. It checks, is this an inquiry? If yes, copies to the ERP and basically replies back to the operator saying, all done. Once again, if it fails or something, it triggers a different flow and be like, okay, I couldn't do this one. Please, could you help me? And then when the ERP, what happens is they call the customer and get some more details. So they were already using like kind of transcript technologies. So we have the transcript of the call. They ask more details about the job, etc. Now they need to produce a quote. So they had a database of like prefabricated. So if somebody wanted this service A, the quote would contain this text and would contain this light item and it would cost this much. And they had it in like different spreadsheets, etc. So we simplified it, we put it in one place, and now the AI gets the details about the sales opportunity, the transcript from the call, the business rules about, if they talk about this is the service we wanna adjust, which is in a Google Sheet. So if they add a new service, just add it to the sheet, and runs the workflow and pre-creates the quote in the ERP system. So once again, the sales, the BDR previously had to go to the spreadsheet, copy from the spreadsheet to the ERP, has a pre-prepared quote, scans through it, applies a discount, sends to the client. And it's flexible, so it's not limiting. They need new types, you just add it to the spreadsheet and it works. And that was really, really impactful to them. And also, it was quite a good buy-in because the people, the BDRs, thought they had control. Because when I was demoing it to them, I would create a call and it'd be like, well, that's wrong, it did this wrong. I was like, okay, let me adjust in the spreadsheet, run it again. And they saw, you got it right this time. I was like, yes. This is what you do in the future.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that you guys have gone down this route as an area of focus. In addition to the core services that you provide as an agency, like migrations, maintenance of existing sites, growth acceleration stuff. So it makes a lot of sense because I can see more demand coming out of e-com teams for this skill set, not just traditional development. And it is agnostic to platform because at the end of the day, it's about connecting data sources and running functions and giving people outputs they need to be better at their jobs. So I'm pretty hopeful that this episode will have opened a few people's eyes to what the potential is within client-side, but also with how the agencies can support them with smarter workflows.
Yeah, I think we kind of discovered the efficiency with automations and AI internally to a point where we thought this is clearly beneficial to all businesses. I mean, our focus and understanding is obviously within the world of e-commerce, but it doesn't stop there. It's anyone in a working job really can benefit from these things. So as an agency, it felt very natural for us to create a service to provide this to not just our clients, but anyone who's interested, regardless of whether we manage your website or not. And I think it's also important to highlight the sort of the boring but important operational side of businesses, where we spend a lot of time looking at how they operate and how we can gain efficiency. So we do a lot of work within marketing teams around e-commerce efficiency, but also just pure operational side of businesses too, where a lot of efficiency gains can be found. So that's our aim really, is to provide a service to help businesses unlock internal efficiencies, removing grunt work, which no one wants to do, and allowing people to focus on high value thinking tasks. And one of the things I think is sometimes overlooked, because everyone focuses on efficiency and not having to do certain tasks that AI can do, is actually quality. So one of the really interesting side effects of AI is it really thinks hard about everything. People aren't so good at doing that. People, if you're doing a simple task, people tend to switch into simple thinking mode. And we do it quickly, don't apply much thought, all of that kind of stuff. AI is not like that. It's never lazy about the tasks it's doing. In fact, it's quite the opposite. It overthinks most things. But actually, this has a really nice side effect, which is while it's doing a simple task, it often finds something or flags something to you that doesn't look right. And this helps to improve quality. It means that less mistakes actually happen. And so, that packaged up as a service is, I think, a really interesting offer. And certainly since we've been talking about it and providing it as a service, we've had a lot of interest from people about how we can help.
But it's sorry, you go, Jakob.
No, I just want to say one thing, James. Like, I think when we might be approaching it, or where we think we add value, is that we are very pragmatic. So we would normally just go to a business and after a day there, just do a bit of discovery to be able to answer to the senior management, what can AI do for my business on like specific examples. So rather than using the big words and the big presentations, I think what we do quite well is to be specifics. So talk to a finance department and an hour later go back to CFO being like, these are the specific kind of things we could be doing for you. And I think people appreciate it because there is still a lot of, from the senior management, there is still a lot of, oh, I want to do AI. What does it mean for my business? What can I do? And I think we're trying to answer that question relatively quickly. So because once they see these tangible examples, it just all starts making a lot more sense. Whereas these big concepts and buzzwords, etc., can be sometimes overwhelming.
Yeah, and I think I'm back to your starting point around agentic and transactional use of AI is that the best way to see this is a collaboration. And it feels weird saying that because you're collaborating with basically a bot. But then you start, I've realized this, I start actually saying, please, could you, and thank you, because it's helping me. But you've got to see this collaboratively, and it's to get true outcomes. It's not perfect, but it's iterative. But you've actually got to build a relationship with understanding the limitations of the AI models because they do make mistakes. And to think that they're not going to make mistakes is utterly crazy because they're going to send you wrong information, and you've got to have the human expertise to detect when it is wrong and guide it and correct it so that it's learned for next time. And I see this in platform native AI smart assistants. They are brilliant in how they've evolved, but they still get fundamental things wrong. But this is it. This whether people like it or not, the use of AI is there to stay. And I think, Tom, you said it, that to differentiate yourself, you've got to demonstrate how you can use it to get value and add value.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And you mentioned there like sort of marketing help chatbots and stuff. It's actually an area at the moment we tend to steer away from in terms of kind of our recommendations because when you are dealing with clients, it's absolutely imperative that you're giving the best possible service. So internally at Tom&Co, we want our team to spend their time dealing with clients and AI to spend time doing the gruff work behind the scenes. And I think it's true for e-commerce brands as well. You want your internal teams or your customer service team to have time to speak to your clients, not to move a ticket around or to try and solve a problem with a return or something like that, where it could be handed off to an AI that can investigate and find the answer for you. And for me, this is key. This is where you still see a huge value in humans rather than AI, which is that really human-led nature. You want to speak to a human on a phone or on a chat, not an AI bot. And so if you focus on how do you remove time constraints from other areas that are not customer facing, then they can do more of that.
Yeah, I think that's a nice way to round this off, actually. And it's about saving time on tasks that are not adding massive amount of value, but they have to be done because they're just foundational, and freeing up time to think, to help, to add value, whether that's added value to customers, to your colleagues, to agencies, whatever it might be. But look, thanks so much for joining. I knew this episode would be really interesting. I hope the people listening have got a lot from it as well. I could sit and ask you loads more questions on this. But anyone's listening, if you are interested, do reach out. Tom and Jakob's contact details on the landing page. They're great people to connect with in the industry generally. Always want to have a chat. But also, if you're looking at how you might exploit AI automations and workflows to benefit your business or businesses you work with, why don't you reach out, and there might be an opportunity for them to help you solve the riddle. So thanks, gents, for joining the podcast.
Oh, thank you for inviting us. A pleasure.
Yeah, take care. You're listening to the Inside Commerce podcast hosted by experienced consultants James Gerd and Paul Rogers. Inside Commerce is your fast track to digital knowledge, featuring interviews with leading e-commerce retailers, industry thought leaders, and the C-suite of key tech companies to explore the latest in digital strategy, customer experience, and tech. Discover what the latest trends really mean and get practical advice based on experience to help fine-tune your e-com strategy and tech stack. Follow us on LinkedIn and reach out to James or Paul if you'd like to discuss an e-commerce project. We hope you enjoy the latest episode.